Well, hello there, and good morning. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. A show dedicated to progressive rock, heavy metal, hard rock, and other forms of rock music. Okay, today we're going to be doing a look back at a classic rock album. This one I've been looking forward to doing. I've been listening to it this morning and going over what I want to say. And of course, we're talking about one of the first, if not the first, progressive rock album ever made, In a Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. Fantastic album. So my little history about King Crimson with me before I get into talking about this album. So how does this work? Okay, so I discovered progressive rock probably with Rush in the late 70s and the early 80s. And my friend also brought to the table Yes. He told me about the band, so I went out and I bought the newest album they had out, which was Drama at the time. And I kind of liked it quite a bit, which was enough to motivate me to go and buy several of their back albums. The first two I got were Tornado and Fragile. Then he came to my house one afternoon with an album, and I'm going to think this was in the early 80s, maybe 83, maybe as far up as 84. He brought the album Close to the Edge, which I had never heard, and I got right into it. And we were talking about the album. He says, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is the last album with the drummer. He left to go to another band." I said, "Why would he go to another band? This is so fantastic." He said, "The band he went to was King Crimson. They were the first kind of progressive rock band." So that was my first introduction to King Crimson. I hadn't listened to the music, but I knew of them because of Bill Bruford. So a few years passed, and I never actually went out and did anything about it, but I had an album that was purchased for me, I believe, for one of my birthdays, which is an album called Harder, Faster by April Wine. And they did a song called 21st Century Schizoid Man, which turns out was a song by King Crimson. So that was my introduction. And I didn't really care for this song. It was a little bit different for me, so I didn't pursue listening to King Crimson until the next thing that happened was probably around a couple of years ago. I started getting a lot heavier back into rock music, although I had my bit of time in the early part of the century after my daughter was born, and had steadily gotten more involved with music as I had gone through that period in the 90s where I really didn't listen to music. And then somebody suggested this album, and I thought, well, I've heard of this band, I know of them, I know about them. So when I purchased the first group of albums I bought online, this was one of the ones I bought. This was last summer in June. And I decided to start this site based on my interest in music and having listened to a few other people doing this kind of stuff. And so this was one of the albums that I put in my playlist back then in June or July, and it's still in my playlist today. And so I wanted to give it a look back at a classic rock album video, and that's what we're doing today. So that's my history of King Crimson, and I hope that kind of spells out where I am with them. They're fairly new to me now, although they have been around forever. But this is the first album I purchased by them, and I have to say I've been overwhelmingly pleased with what I've heard, and I just love this album. I play it all. It's like I said, it's in my playlist, so it gets a couple of plays a week anyways. And so we're going to just start by talking about the album itself. And one of the things I want to talk about is it was released on October 14th, October 10th, 1969. I can't even read my own handwriting. At the Wessex studio in London. It's about 43 minutes, 44 minutes long, and it's on Ireland and Atlantic in the States. The cover was done by Barry Godbar, who unfortunately died sometime within the year after the album cover was put out, which is unfortunate, so they couldn't use them again. And of course it was produced entirely by King Crimson. Okay, so appearing for King Crimson on this album are Robert Fripp, who plays electric and acoustic guitars, Michael Giles, who plays drums, percussion, and does backing vocals as well, Ray Blake, who is the lead vocalist and bass player, and eventually became a member of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Ian MacDonald plays a host of instruments on this: sax, flute, clarinet, bass clarinet, mellotron, harpsichord, piano, vibraphone, and he also does vocals too. And they include Peter Seinfeld as a member of the group, even though I don't think he played any instruments. He was basically the lyricist in the Illuminations, so he probably highlighted certain aspects of the songs. Okay, so I'm just going to read a few things about it, not just go over the booklet with you. I gotta get my glasses on for this because I just don't see it. Okay, so this is the cover, as you've seen in the back cover, and then it comes with a booklet. It talks about the history of the group and the history of this album in particular. Shows all this stuff in another shot in the lyrics and the album. Fantastic stuff. It's really good stuff. The album, according to the RR Top LPs they showed, came on at 5th place on the charts, which is pretty spectacular when you're a new band like that, especially playing the type of music they played, which in that time period was very different. Nobody else had anything like this out there. Very psychedelic almost, and progressive in its arrangements and everything, you know. So anyways, I'm going to talk about the music a bit. Okay, there's 5 tracks on this, all fairly lengthy tracks. I think the shortest one is I Talk to the Wind, which is 6 minutes, and then it goes up to Moonchild, which is 12.12 minutes, and the others fall in the range there. So I like pretty much every track on here. I'm not a big fan of 21st Century Schizoid Man, although I think it's probably the heaviest track on the album. It starts out with that kind of like trucks and buses and stuff like that. Kind of remind me of Pink Floyd with that. Although that's where it ends, right there. As soon as that ends, there's no Pink Floyd sound anywhere else. It's got a heavy guitar, and which is heavy for this entire track. Again, it's not one of my favorite songs, but I do like it. I don't hate it or anything like that. It's not a song that I dislike. I think the bass and the drums are pretty heavy in the middle. The middle up pretty heavy. The next track is where it really begins for me, which is I Talk to the Wind. The next 3 tracks to me are kind of somber, almost folky, kind of classical in their nature. All 3 of them are great. I Talk to the Wind was probably the first song I really liked on the album. I think the vocals are very good. There's a kind of a dual vocal. I'm not really sure who does them, but they're really cool at the beginning of the song. It's very proggy, this song. Probably one of the most proggy songs on the album. There's a kind of an acoustic guitar bit that I really like in the song, and the song overall is fairly mellow, although it does have a bit of a heavy organ in it. Not heavy like in heavy rock, but just like dominating, I guess is the best word to use. And there's a kind of a flute solo, which I kind of like quite a bit. He plays quite a bit of flute on this album, and this song has a bit of that on it. The next song up is probably my favorite song on the album. It's become my favorite song on the album. It's very somber, a very somber mood. What was I going to say about? Oh yeah, Greg Lake's voice is very emotional in this song, which gives it that somber feel to it. And the song, of course, is Epitaph, which is the 3rd song. It's about 8-9 minutes long. I really like this song quite a bit. I would probably venture to say it's my favorite King Crimson song at this early juncture of my King Crimson musical history. But fantastic song. The next song, Moonchild, is a bit different from the others. Again, it has that kind of somber mood to it. The organ is very heavy. The, there are lots of sound. There's a part that starts around the 5 minute mark, goes to about the 9 minute mark, so we'll do 4 minutes or so where they're just making little noises, little drum bits, little guitar bits, little keyboard bits, just kind of erratically going all over the place. And at first I didn't really like this because I couldn't figure out where they were going with this until I started to realize gradually they start to coalesce and become a kind of a melody, or I wouldn't say a melody, but it's almost like going from chaos to order. They start becoming more orderly, and it gives the song its own style, its own kind of feel to it. And of course, we're talking about the song Moonchild, which is the fourth track. It has a little bit of I think Greg Lake's voice is the clearest on this song, on this particular track. Very good vocals for this song. I'm not a huge Greg Lake fan. I was never a big Emerson, Lake and Palmer fan. Maybe that's going to change now too. I'm not sure, but I really thought his voice was kind of, I don't know, a little bit deeper than I would like for progressive rock, because I come from a Rush and Yes background, so naturally that's the way I would feel about it. But this song is the first song that I've listened to that his voice really captures me. I like it. I think it's perfect for the song. Okay, so we're going to do the final track, which is In the Court of the Crimson King, the title track for the album. The song it's got just a lot of really solid parts to it. There's this big sound, operatic harmony, angel-like, that goes on. It comes out at the beginning, and it continues popping up throughout the entire track. And I really think it adds a quality and is the dominant force of this song. The organ is very dominant in this, and the organ actually plays very well with to me, with the operatic harmonies that they do on this song. Really well put together song, I think. And then there's a flute solo mid-song, which is probably one of my favorite. It's my favorite flute part on the album, and I'm a Jethro Tull fan, so it's not easy to impress me with the flute. And what he does on this, he's not like Ian Anderson, like jumping all over the place type flute, but it very adds, like, they could have put a guitar solo here. I don't think would have had the same effect as the flute did on this song. The reason I think that it has such a strong effect is because you have these big angelic harmonies and this monster organ, and the flute just kind of tempers that and brings it into focus. So to me, I like this song quite a bit. I like every song on the album quite a bit. I wouldn't give any of them a failure at all. All of them to me are really good. I've been listening to this album now since June, so it's July, August, September, October, November, December. So over 6 months it's been on my playlist, and it's still at the top of my playlist. It's still one of the albums I want to listen to the most. It just has a lot of longevity to it. I suspect that it may become one of my favorite all-time albums. And I haven't had one of those, like an album to crack my top 10. That hasn't happened in more than a decade. And so it's encouraging, it's making me want to do this kind of music thing a lot more. So there you have it. In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson from 1969. Fabulous album. If you haven't listened to it, please do yourself a huge favor and listen to this. It's a great album. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to doing more of this. So if you like it, put a like in the like column at the bottom. And if you want me to do more of this kind of stuff, please subscribe, and I'll get right on it. Anyways, have a good day. This is Prog Monster out.